This is our past, gentlemen. This is where we have been. This is how we got here. This is who we are today.
You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, one half a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us.
It's not about that scoreboard out there. It's not about winning. It's about you and your relationship to yourself and your family and your friends.
They're strong, fast, and undefeated. So far. But I want you to remember where God has brought us. I want you to remember how hard you've worked. We weren't supposed to have a winning season, but we do. We weren't supposed to advance through the playoffs, but we did. We're not supposed to be here, but we are. So if there's anything in you that says this is a losing effort, throw it out. Because as I stand here, I believe that as long as we honor God, nothing is impossible.
Week 8 kicked off on October 23rd when the Los Angeles Chargers took on the Minnesota Vikings at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. The Vikings entered the season with high expectations after a 14-win campaign, but has since struggled, particularly at the quarterback position. For the Chargers, the opening 2 months had been uneven. But with star quarterback Justin Herbert leading the way, they delivered one of their most complete performances of the year. Los Angeles dominated from the opening drive, cruising to a 37-10 rout of the Vikings. Herbert was in total control throughout the afternoon, throwing for 227 yards and 3 touchdowns, while orchestrating an offense that dictated the game's tempo and never allowed Minnesota to settle into any rhythm. The Vikings, plagued by inconsistency and pressure up front, mustered just 164 total yards, including a mere 34 rushing yards on 11 carries, as the Chargers repeatedly collapsed the line of scrimmage. Minnesota's offensive struggles were reflected starkly in the time of possession numbers, where Los Angeles nearly doubled them, holding the ball for 39 minutes and 04 seconds compared with the Vikings, 20 minutes and 56 seconds. By the final whistle, the Chargers had overwhelmed Minnesota in every phase, underscoring the widening gap between a surging Herbert-led squad and a Vikings team searching for answers. It's easy to conclude Herbert and the defense overwhelmed the Vikings. In a wild Week 8 showdown at Paycor Stadium, the New York Jets clawed their way out of a 15-point hole to shock the Cincinnati Bengals 39-38 and record their first win of the season. The game was a dramatic crescendo, a high-wire act that hinged on grit, guts, and one perfectly executed trick play. The Jets dominated time of possession, controlling the ball for 33 minutes and 40 seconds compared to the Bengals, 26 minutes and 20 seconds, and outgained Cincinnati in total offense with 502 yards to Cincinnati's 398 yards. Breece Hall was the heartbeat of New York's comeback. He racked up 133 rushing yards on 18 carries and punched in 2 rushing touchdowns. And, in the game's final moments, Hall showed his versatility, pitching from the backfield and firing a 4-yard touchdown pass to tight end Mason Taylor, with just a minute and 54 seconds left on the clock. Justin Fields, starting in place of an injured Tyrod Taylor, put together a poised performance. He completed 21 of 32 passes for 244 yards and added 31 more on the ground, including a crucial 2-point conversion run that kept the Green Machine rolling. Fields threw a touchdown pass to Tyler Johnson, and before he left for injury, Taylor threw for a touchdown. For the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Flacco threw a solid game, 21 of 34, 223 yards, and 2 touchdowns, along with a rushing touchdown of his own. On the ground for Cincinnati, Samaje Perine rumbled for 94 yards and a 32-yard touchdown, while Chase Brown added 73 yards and a touchdown. This Week 8 matchup showcased just how porous the Bengals' defense has become. Despite facing a Jets team that had struggled all season and was considered lifeless offensively, Cincinnati still allowed 502 total yards and 23 fourth-quarter points, including a late trick play and multiple scoring drives. The Denver Broncos traveled to Jerry's World to take on the Dallas Cowboys and rode a breakout performance from young star quarterback Bo Nix to a convincing 44-24 victory over the Boys. Nix delivered one of the strongest games of his young career, completing 19 of 29 passes for 247 yards and 4 touchdowns, offset only by a single interception. Denver's ground game proved just as potent, with J.K. Dobbins rushing for 111 yards and rookie R.J. Harvey adding 46 yards and 2 touchdowns, giving the Broncos a balanced and dynamic attack. Dallas actually controlled possession, 33 minutes and 32 seconds to Denver's 26 minutes and 28 seconds. But turnovers and stalled drives doomed their chances. Despite a respectable 339 total yards, including Dak Prescott throwing for 188 yards with no touchdowns and 2 costly interceptions that shifted momentum firmly in Denver's favor, the Cowboys couldn't keep pace with a Denver offense that piled up 426 yards and capitalized consistently in scoring territory. Denver's balance on offense, on the ground and in the air, with opportunistic play, carried them. The Cowboys committed costly turnovers, and despite having more possession, they couldn't capitalize. On this day in Dallas, it was the Broncos who turned out to be the real Big D, and rising star quarterback Bo continued to shine brighter than the Lone Star emblazoned at midfield inside AT&T Stadium. The star's swagger, precision, and fearlessness stole the spotlight from the home team, turning a venue built for spectacle into his personal showcase. The Chicago Bears traveled to Baltimore to take on the Baltimore Ravens. Needing a win tremendously, the Ravens snapped a 4-game skid Sunday afternoon, outmuscling the Chicago Bears 30-16 at M&T Bank Stadium. It wasn't pretty, but it was effective. A gritty, balanced performance led by running back Derrick Henry and steady quarterback play from Tyler Huntley. The stat sheet tells the story of a controlled, physical tilt. Baltimore held the ball for 30 minutes, 30 seconds, edging out Chicago's 29 minutes and 30 seconds in time of possession. The Ravens produced 355 total yards, while the Bears managed 372 total yards, showing this was no blowout. In the air, the Bears piled up 285 passing yards, as Caleb Williams completed 25 of 38 passes with no touchdowns, but turned the ball over at a critical moment. Huntley managed a more balanced attack, completing 17 of 22 passes for 186 yards, and connecting with tight end Charlie Kolar for a key fourth-quarter touchdown. Huntley also added 53 rushing yards on 8 carries, helping to control the clock and set up scoring drives. On the ground, Baltimore leaned on Henry, who rushed 21 times for 71 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Huntley added 53 rushing yards on 8 carries. Baltimore Ravens. The Bears, meanwhile, ran for 96 yards. The game pivoted in the fourth quarter, with Chicago closing in, having trimmed the deficit to 16-13 on a 2-yard run by DeAndre Swift. Cornerback Nate Wiggins intercepted Williams deep in Bears territory, returning it to the 9-yard line. 2 plays later, Huntley connected with tight end Charlie Kolar for a 10-yard touchdown, extending Baltimore's lead. From there, the Ravens salted the game away. A 66-yard touchdown drive capped by Henry's second score sealed the deal. Despite the loss, there were bright spots for Chicago. Williams threw for 285 yards, including 114 by Rome Odunze, but his fourth-quarter interception proved costly. The Bears also committed 11 penalties for 79 yards, a recurring issue that plagued them throughout the game. Baltimore's defense, meanwhile, played with purpose. They allowed just 1 touchdown and denied the Bears a second-quarter surge, forcing Chicago to settle for field goals early. Roquan Smith, playing against his former team, led the way with 7 tackles. For the Ravens, this victory was more than just a win. It was a reminder they can grind it out without Lamar Jackson. Head coach John Harbaugh praised Huntley's poise and said Henry's leadership continues to anchor this offense. For the Bears, coach Ben Johnson lamented the self-inflicted setbacks, penalties, missed red zone opportunities, and a failure to close in crunch time. The Green Bay Packers traveled to Acrisure Stadium to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers in a clash of 2 of the league's most storied franchises. For the first time in his illustrious career, Aaron Rodgers faced the team that drafted him, squaring off against the man chosen to be his successor, Jordan Love. While Rodgers is a surefire Hall of Famer, it was Love who delivered the standout performance in Green Bay's 35-25 victory, slicing through Pittsburgh's defense with pinpoint accuracy and poise. Love completed 29 of 37 passes for 360 yards and 3 touchdowns, tying a Packers franchise record with 20 consecutive completions, matching Brett Favre's 2007 mark. Green Bay controlled the game offensively, outgaining the Steelers 454-295 yards and holding a slight edge in time of possession, 31 minutes and 48 seconds to 28 minutes and 12 seconds. The Packers, balanced attack featured 94 rushing yards, nearly mirroring Pittsburgh's 93, but it was Love's command of the passing game that proved decisive. Rodgers had a solid outing, finishing 24 of 36 for 219 yards and 2 touchdowns, with a passer rating of 101.5. But it was not enough to match the combined efficiency of Love and the Packers' overall performance. Pittsburgh moved the ball intermittently, but could not generate explosive plays, allowing Green Bay to maintain control and secure a key midseason win. Aaron Rodgers' highly anticipated return to Green Bay ended with a symbolic twist. It wasn't a defender from the Packers' secondary that stole the spotlight, but Jordan Love himself, delivering the game's final tackle. The handoff from one franchise quarterback to the next was complete, and while Rodgers flashed glimpses of his old brilliance, the night ultimately belonged to the new era. A reminder that in Green Bay, the future waits for no one. The Miami Dolphins roared into Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Week 8, throttling the Atlanta Falcons 34-10, behind a balanced offensive attack and a swarming defense that shut down the Falcons at every turn. Miami controlled the clock in convincing fashion, holding possession for 37 minutes and 58 seconds, compared to just 22 minutes and 02 seconds for Atlanta. Miami racked up 338 total yards, while the Falcons were limited to 213. The Dolphins were effective both through the air and on the ground, piling up 197 passing yards and 141 rushing yards. Dolphins' Tua Tagovailoa was near flawless, completing 20 of 26 passes for 205 yards and 4 touchdowns, with no turnovers. Michael Penix Jr. did not start for the Falcons, so Kirk Cousins filled in, completing 21 of 31 passes for 173 yards, with an 81.8 passer rating. He did not throw a touchdown or an interception, but he was sacked once. Miami's ground game was carried by a three-headed rush. Devon Achane led the way with 18 carries for 67 yards. Rookie Ollie Gordon II chipped in with 46 yards, and Jalen Wright added 28 yards, helping the Dolphins grind out long drives. On defense, Miami was physical and disciplined. They held Falcons running back Bijan Robinson to just 25 rushing yards on 9 carries, 2.8 yards per attempt, and limited the Falcons to a meager 45 rushing yards as a team. Linebacker Jordan Brooks led the charge with 10 tackles, 7 solo and 3 assisted, including 3 for loss, and added a sack to make life miserable for Atlanta's offense. For the Falcons, the day went off the rails early. Their second quarter red zone trip ended catastrophically when Bijan Robinson fumbled at the 10-yard line, a turnover recovered by Miami that stopped their best opportunity of the game. Overall, Atlanta converted just 2 of 11 third-down attempts, unable to sustain drives under pressure. This was Miami's first road win of the season, and it came in emphatic fashion. Head coach Mike McDaniel's decision to lean heavily on the running game paid off, keeping the Falcons off balance and controlling the tempo. Meanwhile, Atlanta coach Raheem Morris admitted that when their run game stalled, so did the entire offense. In short, the Dolphins showed what they're capable of when all 3 phases click: efficient quarterbacking, a physical run game, and a defense that makes opposing offenses one-dimensional. The Falcons, meanwhile, were outmuscled and outmatched. A disappointing day at home that raises serious questions about their identity. The Falcons and Dolphins have both struggled to sustain momentum in 2025. Each team has flashes of talent, but inconsistency has been their undoing. The Falcons, despite Michael Penix Jr., Tal's potential, and Bijan Robinson's talent, have been unable to finish drives or establish a reliable offensive rhythm, especially when Penix is sidelined or under pressure. Meanwhile, the Dolphins, even with Tua Tagovailoa performing efficiently at times, have also struggled to string together wins, as their defense occasionally falters and the offense can sputter outside of big individual plays. The 49ers traveled to Houston to take on the Texans. In a defining Week 8 matchup, the Houston Texans outpaced a beleaguered San Francisco 49ers squad, missing key defensive stars, to earn a 26-15 home win at NRG Stadium. The victory was one of Houston's most complete showings of the season, built on efficient offense, physical toughness, and a defense that made big plays when it mattered. From the jump, the Texans imposed their will. Houston controlled the ball for 41 minutes and 22 seconds, while San Francisco managed just 18 minutes and 38 seconds on offense. The Texans racked up a season-high 475 total yards, doubling the 49ers' 223 yards. Through the air, C.J. Stroud came alive, completing 30 of 39 attempts for 318 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. On the ground, Juquavius Marks, 62 yards, and Nick Chubb, 56 yards, powered Houston's run game, helping sustain long drives. For San Francisco, Mac Jones filled in under center as Brock Purdy was unavailable and completed 19 for 32 passes, throwing for 193 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. The 49ers' attack, however, was one-dimensional. Christian McCaffrey was held in check with just 25 rushing yards on 8 carries and caught 3 balls for 43 yards. The story, though, was on defense and depth. San Francisco's defense, already thin from injuries, missing Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, and others, struggled to generate pressure. They failed to record a sack on Stroud, a rare feat. And their inability to stop Houston's ground-and-pound approach proved costly. Meanwhile, Houston's defense made the play that sealed the game. Kamari Lassiter picked off a Jones pass late in the fourth quarter to thwart a 49ers comeback attempt. Injury woes also shadowed San Francisco after the game. The 49ers lost Jordan Elliott, D. Winters, and Sam Okuayinu to in-game injuries, forcing a rotation-heavy defensive front. Head coach Kyle Shanahan acknowledged the team was outmuscled in all 3 phases and lamented the mounting roster attrition. This win is a big boost for Houston, moving to 3-4 and showing they can finish off top-tier teams. For the 49ers, now 5-3, the loss raises serious concerns. If they can't stay healthy or close out games, their window may be narrower than many expected. Both the 49ers and Texans are teams built on talent and star power. Yet inconsistency has prevented either from fully living up to preseason expectations. San Francisco has battled a string of significant injuries, losing key defenders like Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, which has forced a patchwork rotation and limited their ability to dominate games. Even so, the 49ers have managed to stay afloat, eking out wins when possible, showing resilience despite the adversity. The Texans, on the other hand, were widely expected to challenge for the AFC South crown, fueled by a rising quarterback in C.J. Stroud and a strong supporting cast on offense. But Houston has struggled to find consistent footing, alternating flashes of strong play with periods of ineffectiveness. As a result, while neither team is completely out of playoff contention, the reality is that their paths to division titles are narrowing, and the margin for error is shrinking with each passing week. The Buffalo Bills traveled down south to Carolina to battle the Carolina Panthers in what turned out to be a rout. The Bills poured it on in Carolina, led by a historic performance from running back James Cook, who galloped for 216 yards on just 19 carries, including a 64-yard touchdown scamper. Buffalo tallied 410 total yards, with a potent ground game, 245 rushing yards, fueling its domination. Bills. Josh Allen contributed with a steady passing day, completing 12 of 19 for 163 yards, and also added 2 rushing touchdowns. The Bills' offense marched confidently, and their defense helped contain the Panthers, who struggled after losing starting Bryce Young to an ankle injury. Andy Dalton was unable to seriously threaten putting up a rough showing for the Carolina Panthers. He completed 16 of 24 passes for 175 yards, but committed 3 turnovers, 1 interception, and 2 lost fumbles, which cost Carolina dearly. Time of possession included Buffalo controlling the ball for 33 minutes and 32 seconds, and Carolina for 26 minutes and 28 seconds. Buffalo's methodical drives and consistent ground pounding gave them a clear upper hand in controlling the flow of the game. The Philadelphia Eagles and New York Giants squared off in a rematch from Thursday night of Week 6. On a crisp Sunday at Lincoln Financial Field, the Philadelphia Eagles turned in a dominant Week 8 performance, routing the New York Giants 38-20 in a game that exposed the Giants' vulnerabilities and reaffirmed Philly's status as an NFC East powerhouse. From the opening drive, the Eagles struck hard. Saquon Barkley, facing his former team, took the second snap of the game and sprinted 65 yards for a touchdown, setting the tone for a lethal ground attack. Barkley would finish with 150 yards on 14 carries, adding another score through the air. Helping to keep the pressure off him, Tank Bigsby added 104 rushing yards, giving Philadelphia a two-headed backfield that kept the Giants' defense on its heels. Philadelphia's Jalen Hurts was efficient and explosive, completing 15 of 20 passes for 179 yards and 4 touchdowns, including 2 to tight end Dallas Goedert. Hurts kept things clean, no turnovers, and made sure the Eagles stayed in control throughout. On the other side, rookie Jackson Dart displayed some fight for the Giants, going 14 of 24 through the air for 193 yards and tossing a touchdown, while also adding a rushing score. But New York's offense was largely one-dimensional, and their ground game barely got going. The Giants only managed 68 rushing yards on the day. Time of possession heavily favored the home side. the Eagles controlled the clock for 33 minutes and 15 seconds, compared to 26 minutes and 45 seconds New York. That ball control translated into explosive plays. Philadelphia piled up 427 total yards, 276 on the ground, while the Giants were limited to 246 total yards. Injuries also marred the evening for Big Blue. Rookie running back Cam Scatabo, who had been a spark for New York, left the game in the first half with a dislocated ankle. Losing Scatabo was a major blow to New York's offense and morale. What stood out most was the contrast in composure and execution. The Eagles looked sharp, physical, and in rhythm. Barkley running with power, Hurts delivering strikes, and the defense generating enough pressure to prevent a true Giants comeback. Meanwhile, New York looked depleted and overmatched in all three phases. For Philadelphia, the win improves their NFC East standing and gives them momentum heading into their bye week. For the Giants, the loss raises more questions about their offensive identity, their ability to handle injuries, and at this point, it looks inevitable that head coach Brian Daboll will be given the axe as the playoffs are nearly out of reach. The Browns traveled to Foxborough to take on the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots turned a closely contested first half into a commanding 32-13 victory over the Cleveland Browns Sunday, thanks to a potent mix of big plays, defensive takeovers, and a second-half surge. The Patriots controlled the game from top to bottom, owning 36 minutes and 12 seconds of the clock, compared to just 23 minutes and 48 seconds for Cleveland. New England tallied 422 total yards, nearly doubling the Browns' 213, while mixing a dynamic passing attack with an effective ground game. Young quarterback Drake May delivered a signature third-quarter explosion, completing 18 of 24 passes for 282 yards and 3 touchdowns, all of which came after halftime. He also showed his legs, contributing key scrambles in New England's march to put the game away. Running back Tre'Von Henderson helped sustain drives with decisive runs, while Ramondre Stevenson made a highlight catch on a gadget pitch to convert a critical third down. On the receiving end, Hunter Henry, Stephon Diggs, and Kayshon Boutte all found the end zone, giving the Patriots multiple offensive threats. Cleveland's rookie cornerback Dillon Gabriel put together a nice performance, completing 21 of 35 passes for 156 yards, finding tight end Harold Fenton Jr. for an 18-yard first-quarter touchdown and David Njoku for 11 yards. But his promising start unraveled. He threw 2 interceptions that would lead to 14 points. Garrett turned in a historic day, recording 5 sacks, setting a new personal and team mark. The turning point came in the second half, when New England's defense flipped the momentum. Robert Spillane and Jalen Hawkins both intercepted Gabriel, giving the offense short fields and fueling the Patriots' third-quarter onslaught. The Browns tried to respond late. Gabriel connected with Njoku for a fourth-quarter score, but the Patriots closed it out with a safety when Gabriel was flagged for intentional grounding in the end zone. Special teams also played a role. Andy Borregales drilled 3 field goals from 36, 32, and 42 yards to bookend the first half and help New England take a 9-7 lead into halftime. For the Patriots, the win extends their streak to 5 straight, improving their record to 6-2 and signaling bona fide momentum in their young season climb. On the other side, Cleveland's 2-6 mark grows more troubling. All the dominant defensive moments, especially from Garrett, were wasted, as the Browns' offense couldn't sustain drives or protect their own quarterback when it counted. New England's sideline was upbeat after the game. Head coach Mike Vrabel praised May's poise and his ability to finish in the second half, while defensive coordinator Matt Patricia applauded the team's takeaways and pressure. For Cleveland, coach Kevin Stefanski expressed obvious frustration, especially after Garrett's monster day, but vowed to regroup during the upcoming bye week. Tampa Bay would travel to New Orleans to take on a struggling Saints squad. This matchup may not have looked like much on paper, just another stop on the schedule, but a divisional matchup seems to bring out the best in teams even if the season has been lost. On a chilly Sunday in the Superdome, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers leaned on a dominant defensive performance and clutch special teams to throttle the New Orleans Saints, cruising to a 23-3 victory. Tampa Bay controlled the game in more ways than one. They held the ball for 32 minutes and 56 seconds, compared to 27 minutes and 04 seconds for New Orleans. The Bucs weren't explosive on offense. They put up 212 total yards, but they were methodical and opportunistic. Meanwhile, the Saints managed 275 yards, but couldn't turn that into points. Baker Mayfield did just enough, going 15 of 24 for 152 yards, with no touchdowns and no turnovers. Running back Sean Tucker punched in the only Buccaneers rushing touchdown on a 1-yard plunge. And while the offense didn't light up the scoreboard, kicker Chase McLaughlin provided major help, drilling 3 long field goals, 55, 52, and 54 yards respectively. Special teams kicked in big, without question, but the real story was on defense. Tampa Bay forced 4 turnovers and notched 5 sacks. A ferocious effort that stifled New Orleans all day. Outside linebacker Anthony Nelson exploded. 2 sacks, a forced fumble, and a spectacular pick six, returning an errant pass 3 yards for a defensive touchdown. Safety Antoine Winfield Jr. also made his presence felt, logging an interception and recovering a fumble. On New Orleans' side, Spencer Rattler struggled under pressure, going 15 of 21 for 136 yards and tossing an interception. Tyler Show also found some playing time, going 17 of 30 for 128 yards and an interception. The Saints' rushing attack was ineffectual, totaling just 48 rushing yards on the day. Their offense never found momentum, and Tampa's defense gave them nothing easy. This win is a big one for the Bucs. It improves their record to 6-2, gives them crucial breathing room in the NFC South, and vindicates their identity as a team that wins with grit more than big plays. For the Saints, it's another discouraging outing, as they continue to search for answers on offense and deal with a defense that can't always bail them out. The Titans traveled to Indianapolis to take on the surging Colts. The Indianapolis Colts dominated from the opening whistle to rout the Tennessee Titans 38-14 in Week 8, punctuating their surging start to the season, while the Titans continue to flounder. Much like the Browns and the Saints, the Titans delivered another lackluster performance, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The Titans never got anything going, never really put together a marching effort, and their fan base is mostly left brown by their play. Since is it the Titans, and they are two-tone blue, their fan base are certainly blue. Indianapolis piled up 420 total yards, compared to Tennessee's 341. And controlled the pace early on. The Titans controlled the time of possession battle 34 minutes and 21 seconds compared to Indianapolis at 25 minutes and 39 seconds of possession, a modest edge that proved enough as they struck quickly and often. This disparity reflected the Titans' struggles to sustain drives despite the fact they had the ball longer than the Colts. But the Colts' balanced rushing and passing attack was too much for the Titans. The Titans' shorter possessions contributed to their inability to mount consistent scoring opportunities. The story of the day was Jonathan Taylor, who shredded Tennessee's defense for 153 rushing yards on just 12 carries, scoring 2 touchdowns on the ground and adding a third via the pass. For the Titans, their rough stretch continued in Week 8 as offensive inconsistencies and defensive lapses dominated the game. Rookie quarterback Cam Ward completed 22 of 38 passes for 259 yards, tossing 1 touchdown but also 1 interception, while struggling to consistently move the chains against a relentless Colts defense. Daniel Jones continued his impressive comeback season, going 21 of 29 passes for 272 yards and 3 touchdowns. Running back Tyjae Spears contributed a 3-yard touchdown, but the ground game was largely ineffective, totaling 113 rushing yards as the Titans fell behind early. Defensively, Tennessee was undermanned and overwhelmed. Without Jeffrey Simmons, their pass rush struggled to contain Jones, and the Colts converted only 3 of 9 third-down attempts, their second worst rate of the season. Despite this relatively low efficiency on third downs, Indianapolis still controlled the game thanks to big plays from Jonathan Taylor and Daniel Jones, along with dominant defensive pressure that limited Tennessee's scoring opportunities. Meanwhile, the Colts took advantage of their opportunities, applying steady pressure and making enough plays to keep Tennessee from mounting any serious rallies. The Titans' lack of pressure on Jones and missed opportunities on third downs made it impossible to mount a comeback. Rookie receiver Chimere Dike stood out with 7 receptions for 92 yards, showing flashes of promise amid a frustrating afternoon. The loss drops Tennessee to 1-7, leaving the team searching for answers on both sides of the ball. Injuries and inconsistent execution have left the Titans struggling to maintain any positive momentum, and the season is increasingly looking like a long climb back to relevance extending out beyond this season. They may have found their franchise quarterback, but in the meantime, it's looking more and more likely the Titans will be selecting number 1 overall in the 2026 NFL Draft. The Monday Night Football matchup featured the runners-run in the Super Bowl, the Kansas City Chiefs, taking on the Washington Commanders. Commanders. Washington would play in front of a hungry crowd in Kansas City at Arrowhead on a prime-time Monday night under the lights. The Kansas City Chiefs flexed their championship pedigree, dispatching the Washington Commanders 28-7 with a dominant second-half surge that exposed the inconsistency of the visitor. From the outset, Kansas City played with tempo and physicality. They controlled 34 minutes and 03 seconds of the clock to Washington's 25 minutes and 57 seconds, a disparity that allowed KC to grind out drives and stay in command throughout. The Chiefs tallied 432 total net yards, compared to just 260 for the Commanders, establishing a clear edge in both efficiency and execution. Quarterback Patrick Mahomes shook off a shaky start, which included 2 early interceptions, to finish with 25 of 34 completions for 299 yards and 3 touchdowns, and those 2 early interceptions helping ignite Kansas City's offense when it mattered most. His favorite targets were Travis Kelce, who caught 6 passes for 99 yards and a score, Rashee Rice, who caught 9 passes for 93 yards and a touchdown, and Kareem Hunt hauled in a pass for a touchdown. The Chiefs, Isaiah Pacheco had 12 rushes for 58 yards, and Kareem Hunt rushed the ball 9 times for 40 yards. Defensively, the Chiefs were just as authoritative. They forced 2 turnovers and made life difficult for Marcus Mariota, who completed 21 of 30 passes for 213 yards with a touchdown, but threw 2 interceptions. Washington's rushing attack was stifled, managing only 60 yards on the ground. The turning point came after halftime, with the score tied 7-7 at the half. Kansas City rallied in the third quarter with 2 touchdowns, one on a Hunt 2-yard reception and another via Kelce on a 10-yard Mahomes pass. They put the game on ice in the fourth, when Rashee Rice hauled in an 18-yard strike to cap a long drive. This win marked Kansas City's 5th win in 6 games, reinforcing their status as one of the league's most dangerous teams when they find rhythm. Meanwhile, Washington's struggles continued. Despite flashes early, the Commanders couldn't keep pace once the Chiefs locked in, leaving them still searching for answers on both sides of the ball. And on that note, let's end it here. From standout quarterback performances to clutch defensive stops and game-changing plays, Week 8 had it all. We saw historic blowouts, a jaw-dropping Jets comeback, and elite individual performances that shook up the landscape. The Jets, down 31-16 entering the fourth quarter, roared back to beat the Bengals 39-38, thanks to 2 touchdown runs and a scoring pass by Breece Hall. On the other side of the spectrum, Jordan Love channeled his inner Aaron Rodgers, finishing 29 of 37 for 360 yards and 3 touchdowns, as the Packers stormed back from a halftime deficit to beat Pittsburgh. Meanwhile, Drake May lit up the Browns in New England, carving up the second half with 3 passing touchdowns and helping the Patriots pull away in a dominant 32-13 win. Tampa Bay's defense made waves too, with Anthony Nelson producing sacks, a forced fumble, and a pick-6, earning NFC Defensive Player of the Week award as Jordan Love took home the Offensive Player of the Week award. So at Diggin' Deeper, we strive to capture every moment, from the defining plays to the under-the-radar heroics, so no story goes untold. From all of us here, thank you for joining me for another broadcast of Diggin' Deeper into the NFL. I am Brian Parsons, your humble host, wishing you all the best. Stay safe, enjoy the games ahead, and God bless.